I don't know what to tell you. To me, it's not repairable vehicle, but there is.
Hello and welcome to the Airing of Grievances with Robert Grieve. I'm Eric Raymer, and we're going to talk a little bit about torque wrenches.
You know, there's got to be some way to know if you've got it done right or not.
Okay, what are we looking to figure out if we've done right?
Put a vehicle back together. It's critical that when you take a car apart, that's all well and good, but
Sure.
now we got to put it back together.
Right.
And how do you know when you put it back together if you've put it back together properly?
Okay, I get that, but doesn't everybody put it back together properly?
Well, not necessarily, not the way you would think.
All right.
Not the way you would think. There's lots of tools to use, but there's also tools to verify if you've got it right.
Okay, so there are tools to use in the putting it back together, and then
Yeah.
there's tools to verify,
Verify.
which leads us to this.
Well, let me introduce to you this tool called a torque wrench.
All right.
This is a precision instrument and comes actually with a certificate that says it's calibrated properly.
All right.
And this is something that should be calibrated at least every year. And for everybody that has never seen a torque wrench before, this is what a torque wrench looks like. And you'll see you can set exactly what foot-pounds you want it to be. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that don't know what this is or why it's important.
Okay. So what do we need to know about this?
Well, in a minute or two, we're going to go downstairs and I'm going to ask Joseph to help me do a little demo on when we would use this and where you might find bolts that are important, that they're not just tight. Do we want them mostly tight? Do we want somebody on there with a big wrench cranking down on it so they're too tight? Or maybe a smaller wrench and they're not quite tight enough? Or do we want them exactly the way the manufacturer says they should be?
And therein lies the whole issue, is we're actually looking for what the manufacturer determines is the right amount of tightness or amount of torque.
It's not our
on
guess.
this. All right.
And it's not our right to guess. And you shouldn't accept somebody's opinion on torquing bolts. Torquing bolts, you may not think it's a big deal if a fender bolt is exactly perfect, but you want your wheel lug nuts, I'm pretty sure, to be exactly perfect.
Clearly.
And the structural piece that protects you in a crash, called a rebar that's behind the bumper, there's torque specs on those bolts. You don't want them loose or too tight. If it's too tight, it could actually snap the bolt. So, and if it's too loose, naturally, it can come loose. And you don't want either of those things. You want it exactly.
Both of those would be bad.
Yeah, both of them would be bad, especially if we're talking about suspension items or rebars, or maybe the hinges on your doors. You know, these are all things that we want them to be exactly what the manufacturer wants. And using this wrench, we can know that it's exactly what the manufacturer wants and not our guess.
What do you say we go downstairs and take a look?
Let's do it. We're going to see how this torque wrench works now. We're going to take something simple, like everybody knows about lug nuts that hold their wheels on. Joseph, come on over, Joseph. Okay. Joseph's going to help me. Joseph, these should be tightened with a torque wrench?
Yes,
To make sure that they're exactly the way the manufacturer wants them?
exactly.
Okay. And what is the measurement? What is this supposed to be?
Torque spec should be.
We need to look them up.
I have it right here.
Okay.
97 foot-pounds.
97 foot-pounds is what that lug nut should be, or all those lug nuts. Okay. Do we have a tool that we can check that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, cool. So we're getting out a torque wrench. So you'll see that we have to tell it what it is we're trying to achieve. So he'll set this to the exact foot-pounds that he needs to make sure that those lug nuts are exactly what they're supposed to be. Not our opinion. Not anybody's opinion. They'll be exactly what the manufacturer says they ought to be, because we pulled the information off of Toyota's site.
Set that to 97.
Okay, beautiful. So let's see. Oh,
That one's okay.
that one's okay. How do you know?
When you hear the click, sometimes I'll do a double click. So right there, that means that it's where it needs to be.
Okay.
So all
And
these are
then
where
we
they need to
double
be.
check all these on every single car going out the door
Yes.
before
Last
it
thing we do.
leaves. Okay. Are there torque specs for other bolts?
Probably most bolts on this car.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that there's torque specs for pretty much every single bolt. Now, let's show what a typical technician would attach this rebar,
Okay.
how they would attach it with that tool. Yep, that's the one. Okay.
So they
Now,
put that on just like
do you
that.
think that that's torqued the way it should be torqued?
No, I know it's not.
You know it's not.
Also because the battery, you don't know how far the battery's charged. So
Okay. So we double check.
yes.
So we know exact. Oh, what are the foot-pounds for that? Because it's probably
This one-
different than this.
Is 52 foot-pounds.
52.
We pulled that up.
Oh, right here.
52
Okay.
foot-pounds.
And this is right off of Lexus's site. And so the rebar should be 52 foot-pounds.
Yeah.
So,
And we always gotta
and we
keep it
just
down
ran
there.
a bolt up in there like you would find in any traditional body shop.
Always got to take it back down to zero for every
Oh, you
time
got to
wanna
bring it
change
down to 0 and then put it back up?
Yep.
Okay.
Every time.
And let's see what you got.
So this is where I'm going to start tightening right here.
Oh,
So right there, it took about a quarter turn.
okay. And there you have it. Now, are all wheel lugs the same? The same torque pounds?
No.
No? So over here we have a Lexus GS. Here, that's going to be different?
Yes, it will be.
What was the one on that one over there, Joseph?
97 foot-pounds for the wheel.
Okay, and this is 76 foot-pounds. So every car possibly is different, so we need to look it up
Yes.
on each individual car so we know.
Every time.
All right, so we're not going to spend any more time showing how to use the wrench, but we are going to show how important it is, because that's lug nuts that we were just covering and bumper reinforcements. Over here, we have an example of Volvo suspension. And Joseph, are there going to be torque specs for each one of these bolts for the suspension?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we would want them to be exactly the way the manufacturer wants them to be, not just run a wrench on it and be done.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, welcome back. We just got done watching Joseph torque not only the wheel on that Lexus, but we also took a look at the different specs for different vehicles, and had a conversation a little bit about the different suspension torques.
All critical.
It seems to me that there's a lot riding on all of that.
Well, you said riding on it.
Yeah,
It's the only thing between the ground and you
right.
in many cases.
So it's obviously of paramount importance. And even as we were talking, I thought to myself, the bolts that hold on the hood, right?
There's torque specs for them too.
There would have to be. And you certainly don't want them going bad if you're driving down the road and all of a sudden...
Well,
bumper
just
or whatever.
imagine, they're torqued the way they should be.
Yeah.
It's going to operate as designed.
Right.
So if you get into a front end collision, that hood isn't going to come through the windshield
That's important.
because it was torqued properly.
Right.
If it was torqued too much, like we used too big a wrench or something,
You said the bolt could break.
the bolt could snap, and if it comes disconnected from the hood, go right through right through the windshield.
Yeah.
So all these bolts, the manufacturer has a spec for them,
Absolutely.
and they're important.
So, Rob, let's wrap this up by asking you this. What's the takeaway? What do you want our viewers to learn from this exercise?
That, there may be a difference. When you take your car to be repaired, you want to have confidence. And we take it for granted somebody's putting it back together properly because they're giving it to us and it looks proper.
Looks right.
But for us, we need to know exactly. And that's why we use tools like this and other measuring devices to make sure that it's back to the way the manufacturer wanted it, to protect you in a future, or not only you, but your passengers, or if you ever sell the vehicle, them and their passengers. Our repair is the way the manufacturer wanted it. It's the safest place to be.
Well, and I think that we can underscore that with the tagline here at Nylund's, and that is, if it isn't perfect,
It's not leaving.
there it is.
So
All right, Rob. So one really important question here is, why is this conversation about torque wrenches so important to you?
I'm glad you asked that question. We recently had a brand new, less than 1,000 miles on it, Jeep Wrangler that got hit in the rear, and walking past it, it didn't look too bad. But once you got underneath it, the frame was completely bent beyond repair. And so this vehicle is going to need a new frame. And it did damage to the actual box itself. Jeep Wrangler is a body-on-frame design, so the body bolts onto the frame, the suspension bolts onto the frame. It's kind of like your spine.
And it's a popular vehicle,
Very popular.
especially here in Colorado, but I mean, across the U.S., it's very popular.
A lot of people take them off-road,
There you go.
so they need to work as designed.
Yes.
Okay. So, unfortunately, the largest insurance company in America did not agree with our philosophy on how this vehicle needed to be repaired. And actually, I told them it should not be repaired because there are no measurements for some of the items that are damaged. And if there's no measurements, then I can't be 100% positive that it's exactly the way Jeep designed it.
Why are there no measurements?
Well, the factory doesn't provide measurements on the box itself because the box is bolted to the frame. It provides measurements on the frame,
Right.
but not on the box itself because it sits on the frame and the measuring equipment doesn't know exactly where the box is. It knows exactly where the frame is.
I understand. Okay.
So there's no published measurements for the box,
All right.
especially in the rear. There's some in the front, but we're talking about the rear in this particular case.
So the insurance company did not agree with your assessment.
That's correct. They did not agree with my assessment, and this vehicle is now been towed to another shop that is going to fix the vehicle. I'm not sure how, but the reason for this episode is there are hundreds of bolts that have to be tightened to put the body on. So the body is going to come off. The engine and transmission are going to come out. All the suspension is going to come off the old frame and all be bolted back onto the new frame. And the question I have is, with all these hundreds of bolts and all the different specs for each one of these bolts, is that shop going to take the time to torque every single one of those bolts that are critical?
And what about the specs that don't exist?
I don't know what to tell you. To me, it's not a repairable vehicle, but there is a shop out there, one of the largest in Colorado also. So the largest insurance company using the largest body shop is going to fix these poor people's Jeep.
I don't know if I'd want to drive that Jeep.
I know I wouldn't. So,
Hey, thanks for watching the Airing of Grievances here, and we hope to catch you again next week for our next episode.